Hello everyone, this is Nick, and welcome to what is the first of a few videos that's going to be detailing sort of the history of official development of X-Wing in its various rule sets. Just to catch you up in case you've been living under a rock, X-Wing is ending its official development under Atomic Mass Games, and as a result the community has taken over. The X-Wing Alliance, as it's been called, is a group of pro players, content creators, and community managers who are basically taking over the game and pushing it forward. This also opens up the door to future rebalancing and changes in the rules. And we're likely going to see something analogous to being between 2.0 and 2.5 if you're familiar with those rule sets. There's going to be a lot of discussion back and forth, and a very critical eye is going to be going over the various rules that have been part of X-Wing for the last 6 years. Now this video is not designed to be advocating for any rule set per se, because we're going to talk about first edition to start off this video series. And look, I love first edition. And this whole video is meant to be a celebration of first edition, but I don't see a realistic way back to going to it. Indeed, I don't even think that's a good idea in terms of like the overall competitive play. In terms of keeping things balanced, keeping things accessible for new players, I think everything from the start of 2.0 onwards is up for grabs in terms of what we can start to look at. But I don't want this video to be a downer. I take a lot of inspiration from this video from a couple of YouTubers that I'm a big fan of. First of all, the professor from Tolarian Community College and Vince, aka Pleasant Kenobi. These two guys talk about Magic the Gathering, another game that I also quite enjoy. They have a podcast called Dies to Removal, or at least did. I don't know if they still make it. And they made a podcast episode called A Love Letter to Legacy, and I want to make this video very much in that same spirit. I want to celebrate the old style X-Wing. Indeed, if you look at some of the old Magic the Gathering design and a lot of the old X-Wing design, there's a lot of parallels between games that have lasted, you know, the 10 plus year legacy games as they were, that have gone through different rule sets, different design philosophies. And you can see how early on the creators didn't quite understand fully what wouldn't be powerful. And as a result, there were a few cards, a few pilots, upgrades, etc. that really just broke the game. There's no other way of putting it. And we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail in a bit. But before we do, I want to get a lot of feedback regarding second edition and 2.5 and in terms of like what we want to do. And the best place to do that right now is on the Discord for this channel. I've linked it down in the description. It no longer is behind a Patreon paywall. It's free for any of you to access, so please, I encourage you to get involved with the conversation. Since the announcement from AMG, I've been trying to work out what the best thing to do with that Discord has been, and I think sort of feeding the content here on the channel and feeding, more importantly, the conversation around the future of X-Wing is probably the best thing we can be doing on there. Apart from that, we also chat about things we're working on, things we're going to be doing on the channel, a bit of a side project I'm currently working on, so if you want to have a bit of a cheeky squiz at that, head on over to that link down in the description. Joining me for this video is Mr. Justin. How are you?
Feeling all right, actually. It's yeah, good to see you again.
By the way, over the past couple of years, we have caught up. I haven't put him in a cupboard for 2 years, just if anyone was worried about that. It's not really my style.
It was a cabinet, not a cupboard.
Ah, yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Let's the natural light in. Wanted to bring you in to have a chat about our collective experience with First Edition, because you started playing the game towards the tail end of First Edition. Why don't we speak about your initial experiences?
Yeah, so I actually started off through you. The first ship I ever got was the Decimator, and we recorded that unboxing.
And that was September 2017. So you didn't even have a year until second edition was released.
I think 2 or 3 waves after that came the TIE Reaper and the Saw Gerrera Renegade ships, and they had the first bit of information about what was going to happen with 2.0, and everyone was very excited, us included.
Well, it was the start of configurations, the S-foils for the X-Wing. And during that time, you know, we flew some pretty fun stuff. We actually had a discussion We made a video talking about the merits of bringing in the Clone Wars
That was
factions.
actually one of our first things for... I think it was literally... Was it that year or the year after? It was like our Christmas wish list. And one of our ships was Dirge's Starfighter. The red, weird-looking sort of arrow-looking thing.
And I remember... I think that may have been the first time I started calling for the Gauntlet. And the first time people were like, Nick, it's too big, we can't do it. Haha, I won. But yes, a big part of that conversation was around the fact that the three factions that were in the game, remembering that the First Order and Resistance were actually part of the Empire and Rebellion. It was cumbersome as is.
Yeah, it was never going to work in the way that it was set up. I think we both were talking about it, how it would work, and I think we ended up saying that it sort of had to be like a weird fringe scum thing for the CIS.
And a bit of Rebel and Empire, for the Republic, which is not a much better solution. That's still, but it really does speak to how sort of cumbersome the format got at that point. First edition, it was a very, very interesting beast. I think the way I liken it is to sort of like vintage Magic in terms of really weird design with busted game pieces that exist because the company making it didn't quite know how to gauge power. And also, let's sort of compare the factions in X-Wing to the colours of Magic. Just weird things that shouldn't be in certain colours happening in Magic.
But also then you, like, the things with, like, the elite pilot talents were things like a veteran instincts.
Yes.
Which was 1 point.
There was another one as well. It's like versatility. I'll have it up on the screen, but 0 points. You can increase your pilot skill by 1 or reduce it by 1, which sometimes was relevant because you could match it down to another pilot, but also push the limit. A 3-point card that basically... imagine in 2.0 speak, if you could make every action on your bar link into any red action. That's what push the limit was. Do any action... stress to do another action. It's just not linked to any faction, any ship size, exactly the same cost on everything. It's crazy to think about in terms of 2.0 or 2.5. Let's actually look at something that you were tinkering around with because you were quite taken by the Decimator.
I love the Decimator, and I loved Rear Admiral Shenru. He was just a...
Shenru? Hang on, that's how it's spelled?
Yeah.
Shiraniu.
Because we're Australian, we just have to butcher everything and we can't say it right.
Justin, you have the floor. I'm just going to let you speak about this for the next 5-10 minutes. Go ahead.
It was just a ridiculous ship. And this was also back when we still had the arcs of, like, for large ships, you could either shoot forwards or backwards, or you could turn it.
I'll just interject there, Justin. That is not how turrets used to work. Turrets used to shoot in any direction.
That was turrets, but for Rear Admiral you
never had to use an action to fire your turrets. It was a 360 attack. I absolutely guarantee. That's how the Decimator worked, dude.
Oh, that was just ridiculous, wasn't it?
You're sort of editing your memories because it makes a lot more sense the way they did it in second edition. But no, the Falcon, just 3 dice. Never have to use an action.
So with this list here, this was one of the ones that I ran against you, I believe. Eventually I made other upgrades to it over time when I started buying more. I think I ended up buying the epic ships, and that then gave me access to Emperor Palpatine. For the longest time, I was running Ruthless. So you have Kylo Ren, because I was... big Kylo Ren. Just I'll show you the dark side condition. You'd search a pilot damage and you'd put it underneath, and you would then know that it was going to be this thing. But I also had Darth Vader. That's what also worked with it. You could suffer 2 damage to cause a ship 1 critical damage.
I want to say there was a specific... Is it with like Panicked Pilot or something like that? There's something that almost completely shut down your opponent. G'day folks, Nick here during the edit. Now, I don't think we completely eloquently described what's happening with this interaction here. To be fair, we were relearning a lot of these card interactions, but to fully highlight what's going on here, Kylo Ren gives out I'll show you the dark side as an action. And what that does is it allows you to pick up your opponent's damage deck and choose one of their pilot damage cards to basically guarantee that it will be the next critical that ship suffers. And And what people would usually do is take the card Blinded Pilot, because Blinded Pilot completely negates the next attack from that ship. X-Wing has always been a game where attacking your opponent more than they attack you is a good fundamental strategy, and especially in first edition where results on the dice were pretty guaranteed, negating attacks was often a way that just completely swung the game in your favour. Combine this with Darth Vader that guarantees a critical on any ship that you attack. On top of that, the fact that Rack can shoot in any direction with 3 red dice. The whole point of this is to try and crush your opponent's ships before they have a chance to shoot back. And basically having this engine which guarantees that they are going to get Blinded Pilot was obscenely
So this was
powerful
before I
back in the
had
day.
Emperor Palpatine, so I had, Darth Vader and Yasmin Isgard. The start of the combat phase, if you have no shields and at least 1 damage card assigned to your ship, you may perform a free evade
But Justin,
action.
it's got 0 agility. How can it use evade?
Because first edition was broken.
In second edition and 2.5, it changes any dice result to an evade. In first edition, you just add an evade result. It got to a point where we felt like FFG just didn't want ships taking any damage, which seems antithetical to the nature of the game, but there you go.
But that was the thing as well. Like, people were just flying around in circles for many games, and you just, we're going to try and hit you. Well, I roll X amount of dice, and all of these are automatically going to be evades. So you need to roll 4 attack, and you can only roll 3.
And I don't think, Rack or the Decimator was too big on the damage denial, but, consistently getting 1 every single combat phase after you hit a certain health threshold was a lot. Not quite as bad as the next ship we're going to talk about here, the Inquisitor. Could you please go through the 1.0 Inquisitor? And this was actually
I think I just randomly got this one off somewhere online. Multiple people were running this and winning tournaments. So push the limits because, broken things are broken. Proton rockets. At the time, that was worth 3 points, and harpoon missiles hadn't come out at that time, and they were only worth 4 points. A 2 attack dice, you had to shoot it at range 1. It was discard this card to perform this attack. You may roll additional attack dice equal to your agility value to a maximum of 3 additional dice.
I think we got to talk about the elephant in the room. Auto thrusters.
Auto thrusters? What's wrong with auto thrusters?
This was a real sign of the problematic... Okay, I say problematic, I mean it in terms of competitive viability and game health overall. I don't mean it's an insanely unfun card for everyone. It's not.
But you just needed
Pretty much. This is guaranteed dice results. This, in combination with things like Emperor Palpatine, pushed the limit to a certain extent because you could get your double mods on all of your races. Huge issue. And if we have a look at your list overall, we've got 3 cards in particular that I look at. It's kind of highlighting the point of what I'm trying to say here. Engine upgrades, push the limit, and auto thrusters. 3 cards that don't have any limits. Auto thrusters has to go on a ship with the boost.
Well, you can even see with the TIE V1 title, after you perform a target lock, you can perform a free evade action. There was just so much redundancy with everything as well. Like, you were always going to survive.
If you positioned the ship well and you didn't need to boost or barrel roll, focus target lock evade. The list you flew here isn't really like hyper competitive in terms of what was happening to 1.0 back when you flew it. But it still has all these telltale traits of 1.0. Engine upgrade. Anyone has a white boost. There was no red actions. White boost. Any ship you want. Now, it cost 4 points, or the equivalent of 8 points in 2.0. It wasn't cheap, but my God, on large ships.
It was worth every single
And you're going to
point.
see in a second, when you have a look at the lists that I flew, how good it can get. Like, just really good generic upgrades. And the problem is, when you start to introduce really powerful generic upgrades, and there's like a pool of 5 or 6 of them, which are basically always considered for every build just because of how powerful they are, and there's no way to rebalance it, well, guess what? They're going to keep coming up. That's just how it is. However, having said that, we can sort of grumble and moan about what it did to the competitive scene all we like. The fact of the matter is, we all got to do really broken stuff. And it's really fun when everyone is doing broken stuff. You know, going forward with these videos, I will obviously have my criticisms, particularly of 2.5. I think people know my preferences at this point. I still loved the game. Sorry, I still do. It's still around. It's not gone yet. I still love 2.5 because I think the core game is so good. No matter how, you know, busted or broken or just poorly thought out the rule set of X-Wing has gotten, it's always been a blast.
I had a ball there with 2.0. Never really played much of 2.5. I just... It was basically like, I was just like, oh, there's now additional steps. I think the main thing I want to just highlight, the paint jobs, was everything that got me into this game. Because I didn't have to paint everything at the time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, look at this decimator. It's so pretty. And you were like, actually, it does look pretty good. This is why I love the game.
Getting to have those models and combining it with the accessibility, just such a potent and dangerous combo. And the models have always been a pretty good price. Like, I know they've jumped up a lot, particularly recently, but I still look at the like the price of the large ships that recently, like we had the re-release of the YT-2400. And yes, it obviously used to be a lot cheaper, but it's about $70-$80 Australian, which is not cheap for like a unit in a war game, but for a pre-painted ship, and it's pretty good. Like, I don't hate that.
I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I still think about, like, I don't know. I never played Warhammer, so I'm completely wrong to talk about this, but I just think about, like, oh, like Warhammer, you get a smaller miniature and I'd then have to paint it.
There are certainly comparable sized things within Warhammer when we're talking about vehicles. And yes, the complexity and the customizability of some Warhammer models, it's maybe not the best comparison, but if we're talking price for unpainted vehicles, yeah, X-Wing looks pretty good, even in its most expensive form. So this is what I was looking at when I first started playing. I'm going to say competitive in massive air quotes because the Fire Spray was never competitive in first edition. They hit like a truck, but they were hard to maneuver. Just two big ships. Oh, it was a weird time. It's interesting. The Fire Spray actually did get a patch. They brought out ace packs to give extra upgrades, and because the Fire Spray had pilot cards in the scum, what was it called? There was a scum pack with Z95, and it'll be on the screen here in front of us through the magic of movie editing. And it came with the updated pilot cards for Scum. The faction didn't exist when the Fire Spray was originally made. Now, Boba Fett on the Empire, you could make an argument for. Cath Scarlet and Crassus Trellix on the Empire was absolute sacrilege. The only story Cath Scarlet appears in, she is a pirate who is specifically hunted by the Empire. Massive flavour fail. Absolute massive flavour fail. Also, speaking of Cath Scarlet, this pilot ability was unique to first edition. The second edition one, something to do with friendly generic ships, whatever, I don't care. The first edition one's where it's at, man. So again, we're looking at both of these ships and we're seeing those generic upgrades that are just so good creeping in. Veteran Instincts, engine upgrades on both of them. Now, Veteran Instincts, for 1 point, it's equivalent of a 2.0 or 2.5 in terms of squad points or loadout points. 2 points to upgrade your initiative by 1, which is obscenely powerful. If you're watching this and you haven't played X-Wing, or sorry, you started playing X-Wing within the last 6 years, and you've never played with this kind of stuff, tinkering with your initiative, or pilot skill as it was called back then, was absolutely busted. Just absolutely obscene. A Boba Fett at initiative 10, Cath Scarlet at initiative 9, or pilot skill rather. Sorry, the translation's a bit messy because it's 1 to 9 as opposed to 1 to 6. Veteran Instincts could push your ship higher than the highest possible printed pilot skill. No ship started with pilot skill 10, but you could do it with this concept. You could go up to 11 if you put it on a pilot skill 9 ship, but they really did that. Usually pilot skill 9 ships push the limit instead. Everyone was sort of funneled into, there was default upgrades, unfortunately. That's what sort of happened when there was disparaging power levels between all the cards. Anyway, let's finish off the chat about this list. Boba Fett also had Recon Specialist. This is Perceptive Co-Pilot in 2nd edition. Recon Specialist wasn't exactly a busted card. 3 points to double your focus tokens is actually surprisingly balanced, especially compared to the other things you could do in 1st edition. But the fact of the matter is, he got rerolls and attack and defense. The chances of him seeing focus results was so high. There were many situations where I'd take Gunner instead. Gunner basically said, if you miss an attack, attack again. Which is so good when you have mods on every single attack. You know what's crazy about this, Justin? 2.0 Boba Fett is better. What I was doing with these, like, I instinctively found the broken 1.0 stuff, and FFG, they overcorrected with this platform. My God, medium base, built-in boost. Oh my God, 2.0 fire sprays are so much better. For me, the experience with the fire spray, I've flown it the entire time I play this game. It's like the training weights came off. Also, talking about Calf Scarlet, throws an extra red dice at the back, so always attacking with 4 red dice at the rear, 5 red dice at range 1 out the rear, and because of heavy laser cannon, you always throw 4 red dice out the front. And Dengar. Oh, Dengar was so good! Just get a reroll on everything and 2 rerolls on unique ships. Hey, you know what everyone was flying in 1st edition? Unique ships. Unique pilots.
It really was.
The end of 1.0, 2 named pilots with a mountain of cards, spoiler alert for the next list, was just everywhere. It's nuts. It's honestly nuts rereading some of this stuff. I like this list a lot because it was really beginner friendly. Yes, I had to navigate a large base ship. By the way, the dial also got way better on the fire spray. This was cumbersome. So I got to a stage where I was, learning how to like boost around rocks and stuff with a large base. So when I went to a medium base, my God, FFG undervalued medium bases. Oh, they're so good. The positions you can get fire spray. Anyway, sorry. This is not about 2nd edition. Anyway, that's my first janky list. But this right here, this is when I got at my most competitive. Nim and Asajj was a meta list. I actually won my first 4 rounds of a 6-round tournament. I had to message my girlfriend and say, hey, I know we're meant to hang out with your family who are visiting from interstate tomorrow. I might have to come back. Now, I didn't, because another big thing with 1.0, there were situations where you would have your meta list and your opponent would have a meta list. And there were certain matchups that you could just never win. It didn't matter. It was the bane of the Nim Asajj list was Chopper in the VCX, and I want to say it was Ezra. I don't think it was Miranda or Lowrick. No, Dash Lowrick, Chopper Ezra. Those were the 2 lists. Yes. Now, interesting thing about that, you'd think I'd have the same issue with Dash Lowrick. This crushed Dash Lowrick every time. Like, legitimately, no challenge at all. I don't know what it was. These matchups were just guaranteed results. And I'm really glad we're in an environment where that just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, I know the current 2.5 meta is a bit stale. Hey, check out the XWA's announcement that they're going to have regular updates. Awesome. Great to see. Yeah, but this kind of stuff. Let's go through these. Let's start with Asajj Ventress. Interestingly enough, I didn't take the meta version of Asajj, where she took Ketsu Onyo. But the rest of it's basically the same: Veteran Instincts, Inertial Dampeners, Contraband Cybernetics, Gyroscopic Targeting, and Shadowcaster title. I believe what was called Time Walk Asajj usually had Push the Limits and Ketsu Onyo instead of Veteran Instincts and Dengar. I just like this version better. Hello again, Nick here again in the editing suite. So to explain something I briefly glossed over there, Time Walk Asajj was this kind of build here, a little bit different to what I was doing. Basically, Asajj Ventress's ability allows her to hand out stress tokens, and Ketsu Onyo's ability, as a crew member, allows her to basically make sure that nearby ships are keeping their tractor tokens, thereby basically negating their ability to do anything on the next turn, which is kind of analogous to Time Walk, where the list gets its name from. This Magic the Gathering card here. Now, it says take an extra turn, but basically preventing your opponent from doing anything on the next turn and just taking another turn all to yourself are kind of analogous effects if you sort of compare the flow of the game between Magic and X-Wing. It is interesting how Magic the Gathering, both in card names and mechanic names, often creep up in other games. It really is testament to how popular that game has become. Needless, miserable to play against. Just very degenerate, very degenerate. Now, it's interesting, gyroscopic targeting was another interesting part of this. So, Asajj Ventress, or the Lancer-class pursuit craft in particular, this was the genesis of the mobile firing arc, the one you actually had to use an action to move around, which all turreted ships ended up getting in 2.0. Great design, really good to see this happen on all ships, made turrets a lot fairer, love where it went. Gyroscopic targeting basically, as long as you were doing a 3, 4, or 5 speed maneuver, you could just keep moving it as much as you like at the end of the turn. And it was telegraphing what you were doing. It didn't matter because both of these ships had such good zoning abilities. Zoning in X-Wing means you're trying to cover as much of the board with your arcs and controlling your opponent's ships. It's not about trying to dodge anything. It's not about trying to outmaneuver your opponent. It's just trying to make sure you keep getting shots. All right, so Nim, Veteran Instincts, Dorsal Turret, Extra Munitions, letting you, double all your ordnance. Pretty cool stuff. Harpoon Missiles, Cluster Mines, Proton Bombs, Trajectory Simulator, Genius, and Havoc. The Trajectory Simulator launched a bomb 5 forward instead of dropping it behind. Genius meant you could do it after you move instead of before. So you could do a 3 hard turn and throw a bomb 5 forward. Those two cards together is 1 point. This was messed up. And because Captain Nim had Veteran Instincts, being Pilot Skill 10, he frequently just flew last, threw a proton bomb at your opponent, and just got it right in the center of their ships, and just gave them all a crit. Also, 1.0 proton bombs, face-up damage card. Not critical damage, just take a face-up damage card. Through your shields. Yes.
That's right.
Aren't we grateful that Kylo Ren could never combo with this? Holy, yeah. This was crazy. Now, cluster mines didn't quite work the same. So, bombs you drop before or after you move. Mines require an action. They actually have the bomb and mine keywords printed on the cards now in 2nd edition. Yeah, again, Dorsal Turret, don't have to manually move the turret. If you fly into the side of Captain Nim, look, it's only 3... No, all weapons that weren't your primary weapon did not add a range bonus, even if they were cannons or turrets. But still, 2 red dice when you couldn't get an attack at all? Yeah. Great. Just keep shooting. Extra munitions. You could give up your torpedo slot to give an extra, what would be called a charge now in 2nd edition or 2.5. You just gave an extra shot of all your bombs and all your... What do I have here? Harpoon missiles. Oh, we haven't even talked about harpoon missiles.
Well, I said a quick thing about how degenerate harpoon missiles was because it was dumb.
So basically, it caused splash damage. So if you hit someone with a harpoon missile, they would get the condition card, which will be up here on the screen. If that ship then at any point suffered a critical or was destroyed, you get rid of the card either way. But every ship at range 1 of that ship, or range 0, by the way, in 1st edition, range 1 meant range 0 to 1. There was no range 0. If you were touching, it was range 1. You just did splash damage to every ship around you. So the idea is you'd have lists that could fire the harpoon, and then another ship could immediately get a crit in. Just the worst. Just the absolute worst. That's a nice tie swarm you got there. Be a shame if I did 6 damage in one shot.
Yeah, they didn't bring harpoon missiles into second edition, funnily enough, did they? Can you imagine, though, in first edition, if we ended up also having force powers?
I mean, we kind of did. The design around force abilities was focused on focus. Actually, speaking of harpoon missiles, I'll just quickly bring up this one last list. And this is probably the most characteristic of first edition. If you have a look at these two different Kirax fighter pilots, we're spamming generics, Justin. We're using a fixed card that reduces points cost. One that really overcooked it too.
Yeah.
We've got crackshot, we've got harpoon missiles, we've got contraband cybernetics, munitions failsafe. None of these cards exist in second edition apart from crackshot. Anyway, because you're all shot at the same pilot skill, you traces to get the target lock, and your harpoon guys then fire harpoons, and hopefully, if you've done it correctly, in fact, no, what you do, you fire one tracer, you hope it hits. If it doesn't, as a redundant result, you then fire the other tracer. That's the idea. But if the first one hits, then you fire a harpoon missile, right? Then you fire with the other tracer, if that one is still to try and get that crit through. If that doesn't go through, the next harpoon missile might get the crit through. But if the tracer gets the crit through, awesome, because then you can fire the next harpoon missile. It's bonkers how much damage this could do. And this wasn't a meta list. I just loved flying with really broken stuff. I love that we got the opportunity to do it. I also love that it went away.
Well, yeah, Vaxor was a zero-cost thing that reduced upgrades by
It was
one.
a points reduction. It was the equivalent of a points reduction in 2.0. That's all it was.
And then you could also equip additional modifications to your ship.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Up to 3. And you just chose anything that costs 1 or less, because you were like, now it costs 0.
It's free. It's free real estate. Yeah. So, you out there, we're not trying to scare people away from first edition. The format is awesome. Give it a go. But remember, it's like vintage Magic. You're gonna get stomped. But sometimes you're gonna do the stomping.
I still love the fact that, second edition brought out the CIS, and that's my thing. But I still love first edition. Having Kylo as, next to Vader, just doing broken things.
Oh, it should not happen. But I love that it did. Just getting back to something I spoke about at the very beginning of this video, a shout out to everyone that still plays 1.0, all the players that dropped off at the start of 2.0, because we're going into an environment with the X-Wing Alliance where, things are a bit unsure in terms about rule sets. We may get to a stage, and something I really want to encourage is a lot more leniency when it comes to game pieces. If that happens, if we can start to use generic game pieces, it means we can just switch between 1.0 and 2.0 at will. And if that happens, I just want to encourage anyone who's joined the game in the last 6 years, give 1.0 a go. It is so much fun. Insanely. I'm not advocating for this to be the official format and tournament. I'm genuinely getting excited talking about it, and I think we should play a 1.0 game sometime in the next few months, Justin.
Oh, that'd be fun. I would enjoy that.
Let's have a think about that.
Let's tee that up.
In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Please jump on that Discord. Get involved with the conversation about things that happen in the channel. If you want to yell at me to get Justin involved, that's the best place to do it. And with that, thank you all so much for watching.
Have a great one, guys.